Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us for our last edition of Raising Vibration Radio for this season. I'm your host, Reverend Raven. Remember, we'll be starting back up in September of this year, but we're going to take a break after this show for the summer. But I've been very blessed for my last guest of this season, Reverend Gayle Dillon, has agreed to come on and share her life with us and give us some, a new perspective on how we should live our life. So, with all of that, I want to welcome Reverend Gayle. Thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I feel blessed and honored. And
Oh,
I didn't know I was your last show, so what a treat.
yeah, the last show for this season. We'll be taking a break during the summer, and then we come back again in September. So, um, I have so many things going on in my life that I need the summer to get caught back up so I can continue back on in the fall. So,
Well, I
but
think it's great that you're taking a break. That's a good way to
yeah,
honor yourself.
yes, I'm learning self-love.
There you go.
So, about you, I want to know a little bit about you. You know, where you came from, how you got into this, when did you have your aha moment? You know, your backstory. Do you mind sharing that with the audience?
Not at all. My backstory is I was born on leap year in 1952. So I only have a birthday every 4 years. So right now I'm 17 and a half years
Lucky,
old.
lucky.
Um, yeah, just a baby. And I say that lightly. However, I think that when I was young, I really resented being born on leap year. Like, why don't I have a birthday every year? I remember a conversation. I actually worked with a woman that was born on leap year, and we were, how you do those sob story things with each other, like, oh, and my mom did this, and my mom did this. And she said, I have you beat. And I said, okay, what happened to you that you've got me beat? She said, I was raised Catholic, and every child gets a saint, or did, I don't know if it's still true, on their birthday, except if you're born on February 29th. And I was like, yep, you win. So it was different. Now I embrace it and I love it. But born on leap year, and my mom and I both almost died in childbirth, and the
Oh,
doctor thought that I had a cyst on, or a brain tumor on the back of my brain. And he said, one of two things are going to happen. That will either kill her, or it will dissolve, but she'll be a vegetable the rest of her life. Neither which was true. Thank you, God, for that. And then the other thing that happened was, because of the difficulty of the birth and what they did to manipulate my head to get me out of the birth canal, if you will, damaged my eyesight. And so my mom took me to an eye doctor when I was 2 years old. And at that time, I was the youngest child ever to be tested and fit with glasses. And he thought I was going to be blind by the time I was 6. So, in that way, now looking back, I'm kind of like a little miracle, because nobody gave me a chance. Um, but I think all of those little things, what you learn later in life, and I wish we could teach our kids or teach parents, is, kids, what we say and how a child processes it
mm-hmm.
um, has a big effect on them as they become adults. And so I think there were a lot of things that, as a child, I processed and I internalized, and kind of put me on a self sabotage or path of self destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think one of the things that, the other big thing that happened in my life was, I had a best friend. When you meet somebody and you just immediately, um, you don't have to know them for a long time. You just
Yes.
know. And Cass and I were best friends the minute we met. We were like in fourth grade. And when I was a freshman in high school, she died of leukemia.
Oh.
And what happened was, um, that we had gone to the ocean, and we had climbed on the back of these motorcycles with these two boys, and they were going out into the water and coming back in, and we were soaking wet, and we were having a great time. And when she got diagnosed with leukemia, what her mother told my mother that the doctor said was that we all have forms of cancer that live in our system, and a shock to the system can cause it to activate.
Right.
And so in my brain, cold water, ocean water, now she's got leukemia, my fault. And I carried that and went down a path of drinking and drugging from the time I was, I started right after she passed away. And it became part of who I was. You know, I made really poor decisions. There are people out there that have stories that are much worse than mine and survived, and God bless them. But I look back on my life and think of some of the things that I did. I was in highly abusive relationships. I drank. I drove when I drank. And high functioning. And what I mean by that was I always held a job. And so no matter how high I was the night before, I always got up, I always got dressed, I always went to work. And so, my aha moment happened in my 50s. And it literally was. And at this time in my life, I would say every once in a while, when I look back on my life, every once in a while, I would maybe pick up a book and think, oh, okay, there might be a different way, or maybe somebody would say something to me. But, I had a huge brick wall built around me to protect me from the world so I could do my own damage to myself. And I heard this voice, and it literally said, you either need to change your life, or you're going to die, or you're going to end up killing somebody. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And so I found a religious science church by, sometimes things just happen. For me, all of a sudden I was on this quest to find something that was going to help me fix my life. And I went to a bookstore that was behind my house. It was a metaphysical bookstore. I don't think at the time, I'm pretty intelligent. I probably knew what the word metaphysical meant, but I walked into this bookstore and was talking to the women that worked there. And I was on this quest and searching, and they gave me this book. And they said, borrow this book and read it and see what you think. I took it home and I read it cover to cover, and I loved it. But I walked back in and I said, I love this, and I cannot tell my parents, after everything I've put them through, now I'm a witch. I cannot do that to them.
Right.
Is there something that you know about that I can do that is a little bit more mainstream for me? And so they recommended us a place, and I looked it up online, and it was closed. But at the bottom it said, click here for things that are like what we used to offer. And I found this church in Kirkland she changed at the time. It was a religious science church on the east side, which meant east side of Lake Washington. I'm from the state of Washington. And I walked in to a member meeting. I hadn't gone to church yet. I didn't know anybody, which was way out of the ordinary for me. I very seldom did anything without a tribe around me of people. And the minute I walked in, it's just like my whole body knew, this is it. This is your last chance. And I just threw myself into the philosophy. I took all the teaching. I was 6 weeks into my very first class, was still drinking and using, and went out on a Friday night and woke up on Saturday morning and went, I'm through. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to use drugs. I'm not going to smoke cigarettes anymore. And that
Right.
was 20 years ago on the 19th of October.
Wow.
That was my aha moment.
Wow. And when you were throwing yourself into all of these teachings, what was the main point that you learned going to this church and throwing yourself into teaching about yourself?
I think the main thing, the thing that really, if you will, hooked me on the philosophy was I read a book by the founder, and religious science, like Unity, and there's others out there, is an American based, if you will. This is where it started in the United States in the early 1900s, and it's based on ancient wisdom. So all of the different religions. And Ernest Holmes wrote a book, Can We Talk to God? And in the book, towards the back, there's kind of like a question and answer, and somebody asks him, so do you think you found the next great religion? And he said, no, I think I have found what works for me. And what I suggest to people is not to believe what I believe, read what I read, and then make up your own mind. And so there was no dogma. I didn't have to do something except believe. The tenet of what I teach is that we are all God informed, every single one of us. We're all connected. And so and it took me a long time to realize that, you know, my mentor and my very first minister, who is Reverend Susie Shadle, she said, so you think you're so special that you're not part of God? Everybody else, you see, everybody else is part of that except you. She said, you know, that's a little, what makes you so different? And you know, it was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not. So I am part of that. And so it started to shift me out of victimhood and poor pitiful me into taking responsibility for who I am and how I am in the world and what I have to offer the world. Because I think everybody here is a divine idea and has something to give back to the world.
So, when you come to that realization, what started changing in your life?
Oh my God. Everything, everything changed in my life. Some of that is, of course, um, you know, the first thing I had to deal with was when you stop drinking and using drugs, then that, I call it the monkey mind, that chatter that tells you you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you don't deserve. You have to start, instead of anesthetizing yourself and drowning that voice out, you have to start to go, okay, that's not true. You know, why on earth would something that created mountains and trees and nature, why would it create something that it doesn't love? And so if it loves me so much that it's going to let me be who I choose to be, then why wouldn't I want to be the best version of myself? And so I started on this path of, and I, you know, I tell people all the time, you know, that one of the sayings that Ernest Holmes had that I love is change your thinking, change your life. And what I have said to people is, it sounds cliche
Mm-hmm.
and it sounds easy, and it's not.
No.
Because if it were easy, everybody would be living their best lives. But we get into this fear, if you will. What will people think? You know, you know, so, well, I could use Reverend Susie because I mentioned Reverend Susie, you know, has this church and she's got this many members and I've only got this many members. And I'm doing something wrong. And, you know, it's really realizing, I remember, God, when was it? 2014. I went to Hawaii and I saw this T-shirt that said, "Be yourself. Everybody else is taken." And that really is what I teach, is be yourself.
I really like that. So, before before you found yourself and took ownership of where you were in your life and started, closing your mind chatter down, um, what did you do for a living prior to all this?
From the time I was 18 um, until I started a church, I worked in the telecommunications industry. So I started out as a telephone operator at Pacific Northwest Bell, and then when they broke the Bell system apart, I went with AT&T, and I worked my way up into the corporation. And in the process of that, it went from AT&T to Lucent Technologies to Avaya. I retired from there with 31 years working for the Bell system,
Mhm.
and then continued on a little bit afterwards working for some of their partners that partnered with them. And then when I decided I wanted to be a minister, I went through all the training, and I went through a master's program within the organization, and then started church in Santa Fe, New Mexico in 2010.
Wow. So you got an actual church.
I had a church that I started from the ground up in New Mexico, called Everyday Center for Spiritual Living. And then I just left a church because I got a calling to live at the Pacific Ocean. So I left Everyday in 2016 because I wanted to come home to the Pacific Northwest, and I was the spiritual leader at Genesis Center for Spiritual Living in Renton, Washington, and was there through COVID. And
Mhm.
then just moved down to Long Beach, Washington in December of 2021. So now I have an online church and a coaching business.
Nice. So, yeah, so you do have a coaching business, and let me just add that banner to show people where your website is.
Ah, thank you.
Would you tell everybody the name of your website?
The name of the website is Messed Up to Blessed Up, which is, somebody asked me recently, what is that? And I said, well, it's a coaching business, a coaching opportunity to help people find their passion. And it's also my life story. And my passion is I've got a program to help mostly women, but anyone that chooses a program to help people release their addiction, regardless of what it is. And because AA is out there, and it is an amazing program, and it helps millions and millions of people, and it's not for everybody. And so, um, I've created a program that helps people have the courage to release their addiction. And that can be alcohol, that can be drugs, that can be food, that can be purchasing, gambling. I'll throw sex in there. Social media now can be an addiction. So,
Yeah, you're right. Social media, computer time, avoiding our families. There are all many types of addiction out there. There's many types of ways to self sabotage oneself, and and you just got to be able to break through that. And it's not an easy thing because guilt is like the main harbor for a lot of people for self sabotaging. Wouldn't you agree?
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Guilt and fear,
Yes.
guilt of, what will, when I became clean and sober and became a minister, and I thought about some of the people in my past, I thought, oh, good grief, they must be laughing their heads off. Like, who the hell does she think, excuse me, who does she think she is? That, she's a minister. What if people knew that she did this and this and this? And, the truth of the matter is we all make mistakes. Some of us make bigger mistakes than others, and we can learn from our mistakes. We can't change them. All we can do is go, yeah, I did that. And now I'm going to make a commitment to myself not to do that again and to live a better life going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, even if you're a Bible follower, Jesus hung around with the sinners, and who makes us, better than Jesus or anything like that. We're all the same. We're all the one.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm all for that. What does your coaching program entail when someone signs up for you?
I actually have two. Thank you for asking that. I actually have two different offerings. I recently joined a coaching program that I am really passionate about. It is called OOLA, OOLA, and it was started by two doctors, Dr. Troy and Dr. Dave. And about 25 years ago, they were both chiropractors, and they would meet once a year, and they created the 7 areas of your life, which they did them all as F's. So it's, let me take a breath here so I can remember what the 7 F's are. It is fitness, finance, family, field, which is your career, faith, fun, and
Fun.
I did say fun,
Oh,
but
you did.
I thought so. How I'll think of it in a minute. I got them out of order, so I know friends. I'm sorry, friends would be the 7th one, and they have a wheel of life with the 7 F's, and you ask people 10 questions in each area, and then they look at their wheel, and if it's balanced, great. But most of us probably have 1 or 2 areas that rate low, and so like a wheel on a bicycle, if you will, if a spoke is broken or it's bent, then you can't ride smoothly. And so they would coach each other on how to keep these 7 areas in balance. And then during I think it was about 2006, Dr. Dave's life fell apart, and he was not living the ULA life. He talks about driving his mom's car because he couldn't afford it, going through a divorce, losing his business, living in a cheap hotel. And an incident happened at the hotel one night, and kind of like my numinous moment, if you will, he picked up the phone and called Dr. Troy and said, I need help. My life has fallen apart. And he realized what he wanted to do was get his life back in balance and then share that with everybody. And so that is one of the programs I offer. It's called the ULA Life Program. That it's a 10-week program that I walk through with you. That has it has guides, it has videos, and then every week I meet with people and talk to them about how they want me to hold them accountable, and how they want to commit. What do they want to commit in that area of their life they want to shift or change or do better? The other coaching program is based on finding principles in your life. They're kind of, the two programs are a lot alike, only the other program really is, like I said, focused on people that want to give up addictions. And so it is more of a true coaching program about having either group or one-on-one discussions with people about where are you right now, and then where do you want to be, and how do you see yourself getting there? Because for me, coaching isn't me telling somebody what they need to do. That's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Coaching is What's your heart's desire? What's stopping you from living your best life? And how can I help you find that path?
Is it better for people to be in a group situation or the one-on-one? Or is it just according to that individual?
I think I like group coaching
Hmm.
because I think that there's wisdom and intelligence in the group. I don't have all the answers, right?
Right.
And so, to facilitate a group and let the brilliance of everybody in the room help each other and hold that container for them and have guides for them and and things that they do in between each group session. So I love that. And for some people, that doesn't work for them. They're either very private or they really want the one-on-one commitment.
Hmm.
They want personable help, and sometimes in a group, people feel that they don't get that. It's one of the reasons I keep my group sizes down to about 8 people,
Right.
because over 8 people think they don't have to show up or they don't have to talk because there's not enough time. And if you keep it at 8, it keeps everybody pretty engaged. So that's why I offer both, because I want to be available to what people's needs are.
I would think the group situation would allow you to experience being vulnerable with other human beings that you don't know.
Exactly. And vulnerability that's a great word. That is something that we tend not to do with each other.
Hmm.
And it's one of the great things, that, because saying that I didn't get clean and sober with in an AA program. I did go to AA, and one of the great things that they teach there is our secrets are what keep us in our disease.
Hmm.
If we can't be vulnerable, if we can't share with people our secrets, that those things that we hold, like, oh my God, people aren't going to like me if they know this. Or when somebody finds out I did this, then, I'm going to lose all their respect. When you can be vulnerable, not and be honest, then that is the I think the biggest breakthrough to recovery is when you can be brutally honest with yourself and with others.
I really I think that to be very true. Um, One of my issues that I have is like the self sabotage. Like everything's going great, and then my subconscious will throw out a monkey wrench into the spoke and bend it all to hell. And then I'm like, where did that come from? You know what I mean? And it's you think you get on the right path and you're going at a good speed, and then it just comes out of nowhere. Do you still experience that after all the things you've gone through?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I think that um, Marianne Williamson said it the best, and I'm going to chowder her quote. So pardon me for that, Marianne Williamson, and anybody that knows the quote by heart. I do not, but it's that our biggest fear in life really is shining our light brightly. It's not the darkness that scares us, it's the brightness that we carry within us.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, we do self-sabotage. And you know it's that um it's that hiding behind, like, oh, when I get this perfect, then I'll do it. Or
Hmm.
if I take this class, then I'll be ready. Or, and that's part of self-sabotage is, you're ready to be that coach, you're ready to be that minister, or you're ready to be that great salesperson or that great teacher or whatever it is that your heart is calling you to be. And yet you think you need one more thing. I can't do it until this one more thing. And And learning is great. I'm a lifelong learner. I
Mhm.
love to take classes. However, if I use classes to prevent me from doing things like this, or from offering classes on Facebook, or from offering coaching programs, if I'm busy, so busy taking classes that I'm not doing anything to give back, that's a form of self-sabotage. And that's based on fear,
Mhm.
right? That fear of being judged, fear of not being worthy. There's tons of other podcasts out there, right? And yet
Yes.
you have the courage to do this and do it in your own style. And I
Yes.
I love that. So kudos to you.
Well, thank you. I've been doing a podcast, my own podcast since 2015.
Wow, ahead of
But
the curve.
yeah, but I was doing other people's podcasts with them. Like 2013 is when I first started getting into podcasts. So, uh, and it was a making fun of spiritualism podcast. you know, making a mockery with reading tarot cards to people and telling, but when I was doing that show, what I was saying really was spirit coming through. It was the host that would make mockery of it all. And so I got tired of that and said, nope, I can't do this anymore. That's not my truth. So I'm going on my other way and stuff. And, what's interesting is people come into your life, you grow with them for a while, right? And then there's nothing else there, and then they just dissipate. Like,
Yep.
do you have that experience too as well?
Absolutely. I will say that one of the hardest decisions I have made recently, and the best decision for me, was to move to Long Beach, Washington. Now, I grew up in a very small town. I grew up in North Bend, Washington. At the time, it's 30 miles east of Seattle. And at the time, there were probably 900 people there that lived there. And I could not wait. I never felt like I belonged. I could not wait to leave town. And once I did, I lived in big cities all my life. And now I am living in Long Beach, Washington, and it's in the southernmost part of the state. There's 1,600 people that live in the town. The
Wow.
closest town, there's 20,000 people that live in the county.
Wow.
Um, and so it's quiet. I can walk to the ocean. Um, one of the things that COVID proved to me is that, I can teach and coach people through this medium. And so I don't have to be in the middle of the hustle and bustle. And so I listened to an inner call and walked away from a community that I loved. And but it but the calling of the inner calling of my soul to be by the water was bigger than the call to stay in something that was very secure.
Mhm. Yes, I have been down in Florida ever since I can remember. I'm not from Florida at all, but I had a calling. I had no family down here whatsoever, and I came down here, and I've been down here since 1989.
Wow.
I'm blessed. I feel very humbled to be in such a great, but it is growing now, and parts of me long to go to some mountain thing in Arkansas or Tennessee or something like that to get away from people, because it can be too many people at one place.
Yeah, it's I really I love the quiet, and I am finding my it's really odd, but finding my balance with nature,
Yeah.
which I don't think I would say to people, my idea of a hike, give me cement in a city. I will walk forever in this, I love hanging out in the city. I love, in Seattle, I love Pike Place Market. I love walking to Lake Union. I loved all of that. But to be able to walk to the beach, and the Long Beach Peninsula is 28 miles long. So you can literally, that would be a long walk.
Yes, it would.
But just there is this sense for me at this time in my life to connect to something much bigger and on a much deeper level than I can get in a city.
Now, with this spiritual teaching that you follow the path on, do you channel? Does that happen with this? Like the spirit come in and talk to you, and you hear things that you're supposed to follow?
I would say that's an interesting question, because there are people that say they channel and that are mediums, and I am not that.
Mm-hmm.
And there probably are people that are ministers like me in this philosophy, and they are.
Mm-hmm.
However, I will say that and anybody, this is not special for me. So I think that's why I hesitate a little bit, is when I allow myself. So I pray every day, and I usually pray with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And when I take the time to get the monkey mind, get my egoic mind, if you will, out of the way,
Mm-hmm.
then my prayers are more from the heart. And so in that sense, I would say I am channeling that divine essence within me to speak my word. I listen, if you will, like when one of one of the reasons we ended up at Long Beach was I had said I said to my husband, I want to spend the rest of my life on the ocean. And then for some reason I took a side step, if you will, and said, let's move to Birch Bay. We had friends up there. I love Canada. It was close to Canada. It's close to Mount Baker. It's close to Bellingham, which is a really cute college town in Washington. And so we put an offer down on the house, and our house sold immediately, ready to close, and the people walked out of it, out of our deal. And once they did, and we had to lower the price of our house to sell it, we didn't have the money to move to Blaine. And I was angry, and I was angry at God, if you will, like, how dare you? This is where I wanted to be. And so I remember I tithed on all of my income, and I really was like, why am I doing this? Why pay, I'm not going to say the words that I said. I can be pretty vocal with God, and he or it or the energy of doesn't mind. And so I'm having this conversation, like, I don't understand why I'm doing this. Obviously this is what happens, and what's the point? And on and on and on. And I was chattering away, and I walked up. I walked to the bank because I was depositing some money at the bank, and on the way back, I do hear things, but I don't call it channeling. I call it just listening to a wisdom deeper than my brain. And it said, so is Blaine on the ocean? And I was like, no. And then the second question was, because I knew that if we bought that house up there, we were going to be house poor, if you will, which we could afford it, but we couldn't do anything else. And the next voice was, and do you want to be house poor? And I was like, nope, I don't. So I went home and I wrote my tithe check, said, thank you very much for the clarity. And so, yeah, but I've never considered it channeling. I just think we all have an inner wisdom, and it could be, I hear it's not like I hear a voice, and yet I do. I don't know if
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Yes, it
Uh,
does.
some people get twinges in their body. Some people get pictures. Um, but it's a matter of being open to listening. I think that we're all moving so fast that we forget of all the inner wisdom that's within us. That's why when you asked me about the group coaching, and I said the brilliance of the room,
Mhm.
because all of us have that wisdom within us. We just either haven't tapped into it, or out of fear, or we just don't know it's available to us, or we're so busy not paying attention that we don't listen. I think even in the Bible, it talks about the still small voice from within.
Yes, I believe you're absolutely right. I love your energy and the way you project yourself. And uh, I know that you were supposed to be on my show like last month, and there were I don't know, it totally slipped out of my mind. I had an injury, to tell you the truth. I hurt my back lifting a 200-pound desk in a squatted position, twisted, and I had to cancel a few shows, but I had forgot to write to you, and I did, and I felt a kinship with your response. You're like, hey, we're all messy humans, I make mistakes, don't worry about it, don't get upset. And I was so devastated because it's very unprofessional of me to have that type of situation. And you made me feel like, hey, it's no big deal at all. Don't worry about it. And I felt an instant kinship with you without even meeting you, without having, this is the first time you and I are talking tonight.
It is.
It is. And I just felt this, but just from your email, this kinship. And I think you have this beautiful energy. And maybe it's your life path that you've taken to get you to this point, but it's absolutely wonderful. And you just bring that hope that anybody could get through any type of situation.
Oh, well, thank you. And I think that they can. I don't think we need to do it alone. Um, and I think that I just, the human spirit is so amazing. What we can do if we get out of our own way. And it just, to me is really, if each one of us really understood our magnificence and understood that we're all connected, we could collectively solve so many of the human conditions, but we are so busy trying to position and compete and I'm right, you're wrong type of thing. So it's that humanness of us that stands in the way of our spirit.
So you said you get up and pray every morning, and you do it with other people. Do you ever have those moments where you just don't pray at all? And what's the difference if you miss prayer? How's your day go for you?
So let me correct that a little bit. I pray almost every day. However, I have a spiritual practice that I do every single morning,
Hmm.
and I can tell the difference when I don't. And my spiritual practice includes, I have like probably 10 books that have a daily spiritual reading in them, right? So
Hmm.
it's not like I'm reading 10 books a day, but I read like the daily, like today's May 14th. So I read what every book has to say about May 14th, like what's their guided message, if you will. And I read two books that are written by the founder of the philosophy that I follow. I read a book called The Stoics. I use the Science of Mind magazine. I've use Marianne Williamson. So they have, so I read.
Mm-hmm.
And then I meditate for 20 minutes. I journal, but journaling was never something that I would say, I don't know if you can be bad at journaling, but I always just judged my journaling. Like, I don't like this. I'm not doing it right. What do they mean? And then I read this book and she suggested writing a letter to your CSO, which is Chief Spiritual Officer. And so every morning I just say, God morning, CSO, and I write a letter. And in that letter, it might be an affirmative prayer, it might be affirmations, it might be intentions that I'm setting for the day. So I do journal and I do some tapping, which is emotional freedom technique.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's how I start every day. And do I miss days? Yes. And when I miss days, I notice the difference. And it's kind of like when you get up in the morning and you're not in a good mood, and then you notice it projects out into your whole day.
Uh-huh.
If I haven't taken that time for myself, then it seems like I'm constantly trying to catch up.
Yes.
If I'm describing that correctly, when I take the time to spend time with myself, then it's like my day hums. And if I don't take that time, then it seems like I'm on that little I call it the gerbil wheel. I'm just
Yeah.
running around like this trying to catch myself.
I totally picking up what you're laying down there. Myself, I always feel like I'm a fireman with a hose putting out a fire here and there all day long when I don't take the time to do my gratitude prayer. I don't journal. I'm very guilty of that. I don't journal. I've never wanted to sit down. I'm a voice person. I like to talk, but to sit there and write, and I've been told that, oh, journaling is the best thing for you. So thank you for mentioning that, to writing a letter to my chief spiritual officer. I might give that a try and see how that works out.
Yeah, give it a try. It worked for me because it took the pressure off, you know.
That is that's
And it was
awesome.
it's only pressure I put on myself, but this just kind of released it. It was like, I'd love to write letters, so why not?
So, in your coaching for the 7 F's and fun being one of them, what is your idea of fun besides walking on the beach?
My biggest thing of fun is my husband and I, our very first date was at a coffee house called Zoka's in Seattle. And it's one of our favorite things to do is to grab some books, or, if I was studying, or just to take something to a coffee shop. So it's got to be a coffee shop that has chairs and, some nice pastries, and sit for an hour or two and just relax and read and have really good coffee. So that's one of the things I do for fun. Now that I'm back down at the coast, I have not started this yet, but for Christmas, I got a kite. I used to fly kites on a regular basis and then stopped. And so I'm going to pick that back up. We like to hike, so that's fun. Those are probably the major ones. Oh, I'm skiing. I love to ski in the winter.
Oh, nice. So, how far are you from Seattle now? Because you said you were in the southernmost tip of the state.
I am 3 hours from Seattle and 2.5 hours from Portland, Oregon.
I got you. Is there a train that runs through there? You can jump on the train and go to Seattle and hike the concrete jungle there?
No,
No.
we love road trips. So, another thing, fun, love to go to concerts. So, we've got a couple concerts. We've got one up in Seattle that we're going to, and one in Portland. So we like road trips. It's a good time just to spend with each other in the car, listening to music and commenting on the scenery, and staying in town for the evening. So
So, how long have you guys been together?
It was just 19 years.
Oh,
On May 7th.
congratulations.
Thanks.
Congratulations. Every time I get with some man, they die on me. So
Oh my God.
I'm kind of quitting them for a while.
I'm really sorry to hear that. I don't know.
It's just part of my path, you know.
Yes.
I mean, the last one lasted 12 years or 11 years before he went, but you know, the first one, we were married for 3 months and he died. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so I'm going to take this time to get to know who I am and you know, fall
Well,
in
at
love
least
with
you got to
myself.
be there for them.
Yeah, I would. Yes, it's always a blessing to be there for someone that's passing away, be it a mother, a father, a husband, a child, whatever, whoever, the friend, a cousin, whatever. But at some point in your life, you're like, I'm tired of being in that trajectory of life path and change it. And I'd like to just have some fun and get to know who I am for the first time in my life instead of, you know, always being on duty. Although I do love being in service for God. You know what I mean? I always like to be in service.
I remember when I was in a particularly uncomfortable place in my life, talking about finding yourself in, and somebody said, just go home and say, scream if you want to, do whatever you need to do. Enough. I don't want to do this anymore. Whatever needs to be healed within me,
Mm-hmm.
so that I'm not attracting that into my life anymore. I'm complete. So, and like I tell people, it's not like all of a sudden you're going to be living in a bed of roses and, money's going to rain down upon you. But I felt like the ground started to expand underneath my feet and I wasn't so desperate.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is realizing that although we laugh, that there was something in you that was calling in, I believe, not
Mm-hmm.
everybody would believe this, but something in you that was calling in um, people that you were going to be there for them when they passed.
Mm-hmm.
And so healing whatever that is within you. So like you said, so now you just want to have fun.
Yeah, and I think it stems from maybe a life, a past life thing. You know, that I, was like I was alone and I just felt like these people didn't need to be alone. uh that they needed that support and that emotional, because I felt like it was something that I didn't have from a past life. I don't know if the what you study, you when you're over on the other side, like you pick out your next lifetime and you pick out your situations and that type of thing. Do you all go that deep in what you study?
We do, and it's none of us really knows, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so we're all making it up, if you will. But I believe, and I have a really good friend that does that her whole um, life, if you will, is about past lives, hers, and she coaches others, and so we had a discussion about, I believe that we are a consciousness that's ever expanding. And so when we talk about past lives, I don't know necessarily that it needs to necessarily be a human experience, because this is what we know, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is all we know. And my husband and I have had this discussion. He's like, "Well, when we come back here next time," I said, I'm not coming back here. If it's a consciousness ever expanding, then what's ever next?" He goes, you know, "But this is great." And I'm like, "But what if the next thing of us is even better?"
Yes.
Right? And
Mm-hmm.
so if we are all living in a consciousness of the
Mm-hmm.
divine, then all of the memories we have, all the thoughts we've ever thought, are all here with us, right? So
Yes.
when I have a past experience, is it mine or is it an ancestor?
Right.
So I don't know. It's um, because I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know. So for me, um, when I sat with Michelle, it was the first time I actually had like, well, that was interesting because it felt like it was me and it was in a different lifetime and it definitely was earthbound.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I don't know if it was me or if it was an ancestor that's in my cellular memory.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't make any difference.
Well, we're constantly reincarnation all the time, even right now in this physical plane, in this human body. We're
Right?
reincarnating every cell, all the time. So, reincarnation is just going on right now, this very moment, as you and I are talking.
Exactly. And we're always changing, right? I'm
Yes.
not the same person I was 20 years ago, thank God.
No, right? I wish I knew what I know now 20 years ago, though.
Yeah, I have said to people, because I will be clean and sober 20 years this October, that if somebody had said to me 21 years ago, yeah, on May 14th, you're going to be on a podcast and you're going to be talking spirituality and you're going to be an ordained minister and a coach, I would have said, you're out of your mind. You know, I don't know who you think you are, but that's not happening. And so, yeah, that's a total reinvention.
I know. Let's see, 20 years ago, I was a welcome wagon lady and I was getting chased by this goose to my car because it wanted to eat the pantyhose off of me. And if somebody would have said, "Oh, you're going to be a podcaster in 20 years," I would have like, "Are you out of your mind?
Right.
I'm having a hard time keeping the goose off of me." What makes you think I could be on air doing something?
Exactly.
Nothing like being attacked by a big old goose. It's hard to let that memory go.
I bet. I bet. It was a good visual, though.
Oh, thank you. So, what is some of the ways, speaking of letting go, what in your coaching practice, what are some of the techniques that you share with your pupils that come to you of letting go things that no longer serve them?
So one of the biggest practices, for me, is and this I love. I don't know if you know who Jack Canfield is, but I'm also a
Mhm.
certified Canfield trainer, and he uses an equation which I love. It's also what Ernest Holmes would teach: change your thinking, change your life. But it's about taking responsibility for your life, and so it's events happen to all of us, every single one of us. They happen all the time. This is an event you and I are having right now.
Mhm.
And there's an outcome, right?
Yes.
The outcome happens based on how we react to the event. And so I could still be going through life saying, oh, poor, pitiful me. you know um I never felt like I belonged, and I had men in my life that beat me up and used me and blah 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 blah, and I could be stuck there.
Right.
And so it really is taking responsibility about, so what if you reacted differently? What if you started to say, so I'll take me for example. I could say, those guys did this to me, and as a woman, they were physically abusive. I stayed.
Mhm.
Right. I was
Right.
in one relationship for 4 years. I was in one relationship for 8 years. I was in another. I mean, it was not like a long marriage like some people put up with, but it was over and over and over again. And I stayed. People have different reasons. Mine was, and I think a lot of people stay in relationships like that out of fear. But it was, I felt deep, deep down inside of me, I needed to be punished.
Mhm.
And so I need to take responsibility. I was attracting people to me that punished me. And I'm not saying that's true for everybody, but it's like, if you're in a bad relationship, complaining about the relationship isn't going to change it. You have the responsibility either to draw a line in the sand and say, this has to stop or I'm leaving. And if it doesn't stop, you got to go. And that's not necessarily easy. And I don't want to make light of it, but we need to quit blaming other people for what we put up with in our life. We need to make the choice that I'm going to take responsibility for this. So that's a huge one, is
Mm-hmm.
responsibility. And the other one is, Ernest Holmes would say, he's the founder of the philosophy I teach, what you resist persists. And so I used to always say, when my monkey mind would show up, oh, that never happened. I don't want to look at that. I don't want to address that. And I had a really good friend that said, Gayle, it's not going to stop unless you bring it in front of you and face the reality that, yes, you did that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you've ever read the book Ask and It Is Given by Esther Hicks.
Yes, yes.
Okay, well, one of her processes, if you'll remember, is to look at something in your life, and instead of going, oh my God, I'm so ashamed I did that, go, wow, okay, you're right. I did do that. But look at me today.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started this, when I said, look at me today, it was like, look at me today. I'm this much different, but I'm different, right?
Yes.
That was the point. I'm different. And so my practice, what I teach people, and depending on their spiritual belief, they can do this a number of different ways. But for me, it was bringing the memory in front of me, owning the fact that that was a true thing that happened in my past, nothing I'm proud of, but yes, that did happen. And then what I would do, because I believe in a higher power, and I call it God. People, you can call it whatever you want to. I also tell people, call it Bob if you want to. Doesn't matter. Call it whatever you choose. But I would say, okay, I'm going to wrap this in. And I look at it and I say, okay, you're right. But look, I'm not that person anymore. Look what I've done so far. Right now, today, look at the difference of who I am. And then I wrap it in white light, because I believe that there's an energy that is around all of us all the time. And I blow it back to the universe and just say, I don't need to see that ever again unless you think there's something I need to learn from it. And sometimes they will show up again because I'm at a different level of consciousness and I need to look at it and see what else can I learn from it.
So what do you say to somebody that has someone in their life that reminds them constantly of their mistakes they've made in the past, and the person believes that they've learned from their mistakes, but every time they try to do something in the present moment, the other person will remind them constantly of their mistakes in the past? What do you think that's about?
Well, I believe that people are constantly projecting their beliefs on top of us,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so they're pointing out your mistakes because they don't want to look at their own. I'm saying you,
Mm-hmm.
just because, so the best thing you can do for yourself is to sit down and have an open conversation with the person that basically says, look it, I love you, if it's that type of relationship, or I respect you.
Mm-hmm.
However, this has to stop. And if it doesn't stop, then I'm going to walk away. Anytime you try to do that to me, because when you say that to me, this is how it makes me feel. They can't make you feel a certain way. But
Right.
when you say that to me, this is how I am processing it. So I don't want to do that anymore. I had to have a conversation like that with somebody that I love deeply, but was very, very critical of my past.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally said that, you cannot continue to talk to me like that. I love you and I always want you in my life. However, my fear is if you keep doing that, I'm going to start to believe it. And if I start to believe it, I'm going to start to drink. And I'm not giving up my sobriety for anybody.
Right.
So it stops, or this relationship needs to take a break.
That's good advice.
That conversation was with my son.
I got you.
And we didn't stop our relationship, thank God. And
That was scary though for you to have that conversation with your
oh,
own flesh and blood.
oh yeah. And trust me, he has reason to be angry with me. And he
Mhm.
has, because he lived through my messy life. And it wasn't fun for him. And I get that, but I'm
Mhm.
not that person anymore. And him constantly reminding me wasn't going to let me move forward. And so, all I can do is say is, I'm sorry. And I promise to do better from this day forward. But I can't go back and be a better mom back there.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, those are the straws we drew.
Right. Wow. Thank you for sharing that with me. Mine is my son too.
Oh, wow.
I'm having that. I'm actually going through that situation right now. And he will constantly remind me of mistakes that I've made in my line of business, and and it just and I'm like, but I'm not that same person and I've grown from it, but I can't get him to understand that. And I have this fear to express that to him because I think it would make him leave if I was that blunt, honest. And I don't want to be alone. So that's
Right.
yeah, that's a hard one. But I if I'm going through it, I know there's got to be other people going through it, and that's why I wanted to ask that question because that's a hard one.
It is.
When
And
you
it's
have
amazing
your
it's with
past
your
thrown
son.
at you. Yeah, that's and thank you for taking the time to share your experience with us because that's a hard one.
It is. It is. We don't want to lose our kids.
No, 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 we don't. I love my child. I mean, he is a part of me, and I want him in my life. But I'm at the point where I can't have you throwing up my past mistakes in my face when I am growing as a human being, moving forward and expanding. And a lot of newness is coming in for all of us right now.
Right. And that's how you start the conversation. I love nobody on this planet more than I love you. You are part of my life,
Yep.
and just tell him see, I think that's one, if we talked about vulnerability,
Hmm.
that's been really vulnerable where we think we have to be the parent. But
Hmm.
here's the thing, our kids are adults now.
Yes.
And so we can still be their moms. We can still love them like their moms. And yet sometimes we have to have really deep, honest conversations with them because, um, you know, it's interesting. You wonder maybe where he's made some mistakes, and it's easier to point your mistakes out than to look at his own.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm understanding that now. Earlier you mentioned you've been married to your husband for 19 years and you've been sober for 20. So you took a whole year to get to know you before you jumped into a new relationship, or were you dating him at the time when you were getting to know yourself? What happened there?
So I got clean and sober in October,
Mhm.
and we had our first date in May. So it wasn't a whole year. But that was such a blessing because he is my biggest supporter
Mhm.
of me being clean and sober. In fact, it's really interesting because he doesn't have an issue with alcohol. However, a year ago, he decided to not drink anymore. And,
Aw.
you know, right around, it was after he said, I haven't been drinking for a year. And I said, how much that I really appreciated that,
Mhm.
because sometimes, there are a lot of people out there that are clean and sober that can't be around people who drink.
Right.
And I cannot be around people who smoke pot because I could get a contact high, but alcohol, I can be around people who drink
Mhm.
if I know them, and I don't want to be, I don't go to huge big parties where everybody's drinking and I'm not, but there can be an uncomfortableness that I internalize when I'm around a lot of people that are drinking and I'm not. Like sometimes I'm like, well, how come I have to be odd man out?
Mhm.
And so for him just to make a decision he wasn't going to drink anymore was such a gift that he didn't do it for me, right?
Right.
And he didn't have to do it. He just chose, and it really touched my heart. So,
Wow, what a beautiful gift.
yeah.
And
So
and
anyway,
and your journey has grown together. You're even more so, right?
right, even more so. Yeah. So, yeah, he's been I remember the first time that I had a meltdown in front of him and he said, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And I said, I have no idea. Right now, I would be drinking a fifth of tequila and I can't, or I choose not to. I could, I choose
Mhm.
not to. So I don't know how to process this. So stand back because it's kind of like a firework that's going to go off and I don't know what that's going to look like. And so, it's especially when you're learning how to really handle your emotions, it's like they can be all over the place.
Right. Yeah, I know in most therapies they tell people to avoid getting into a relationship the first year or two while you're in recovery, because of all the things that are going to come out, and it's hard for other human beings that didn't have that issue, to deal with that. So kudos to him for, sticking around and being with it. That's amazing. And you guys have you've grown. And does he work too as well right now, does or is he retired?
No, he actually is a singer songwriter.
Nice.
So he now, like most singer songwriters, his passion has always been music and creating music and performing music, and he's always had to work.
Mhm.
And now, because we have chosen to downsize, if you will, he's able to focus entirely on his music for the first time in his life. And so he's thrilled.
I love that. And he's a very creative sort, because that it's like poetry to music, right? What
Absolutely.
I bet you inspire him every day.
He has a lot of songs written about me. So,
I love it. And where does he perform these songs? Does he go to a bar or something like that, or does he sell them?
what he'd like to do, and it's because we have moved, so he's kind of transitioning and looking.
Uh-huh.
He would love to do house concerts. Um, and probably what he will do around here is play. There's a couple places around here that have live music that is more of a listening venue.
Mhm.
And so he will hopefully be hired to play some of those places.
Oh, I'm sure he will. I'm sure he will. So my point though is with recovering or changing our path, uh not to worry so much about not being in a relationship, because when you're at that right moment, that pivotal moment, the right person comes into your life, right?
Absolutely. For me, what I think, I remember somebody asking me before Paul and I started to date. Um, so, I forget what the question was. I remember it was after a Sunday service. So I'm standing in the sanctuary and somebody said something to me about dating, and I literally said, for the first time in my life, I'm good being by myself. And probably 4 months after that, I started dating Paul, but it was me being able to claim that I'm good. I don't need somebody to complete me, because I don't know who said this, but some person said that what happens and why divorce is so high, and this isn't happening consciously, but we have these places in ourselves that are damaged, or they have little, they're little holes in our psyche, if you will. And we attract people to us that are going to fill those, right?
Right.
We don't tell each other that our expectation is, you're going to do this for me because I can't do it for myself. And then we get mad when they don't live up to our expectation.
Right.
And so when you can really say, I'm good with me, then there's no expectation on the other person. And one thing I will always say to people if they want to talk to me about relationship is, well, a couple of things. Number one, communicate. If you have a thought in your head, like, why did he do that? Don't hold it in your head. Ask the person. So when you did this, like, I don't want to make up a story. What was that all about? That's hard to ask somebody what their intent was, because they may not know, and we may not want to hear the answer, right?
Right.
But to honestly communicate. And then I think the biggest thing is be kind. Don't, if you wouldn't want somebody yelling at you, why would you yell at somebody else? If you don't want somebody slamming doors during an argument, why would you slam doors? We're vibrational. We're attracting to us who we are all the time. So, if you're looking at somebody and saying, why doesn't this person tell me that they love me more often? Well, how often are you telling that person you love them? Be the person you want to be in relationship with. Then they'll show up.
Yeah, I find that with friends too as well. If you're being the friend that you want to attract, then those people come into your life. That kindness, that supportiveness, the love that you're seeking. My first husband that passed away used to say, you can't pick your family, but you sure can pick your friends. And so you have to be really careful about who you do pick, because you want them to mirror what your vibration is in that moment.
Absolutely.
Very, very important. And you don't want to have vibrational friends that are constantly putting you down. If you've got that going on, you got to look at yourself and see what you're doing to yourself right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's one of the things that I learned was when somebody says something to me and it's hurtful, because normally we don't look at what people say to us when it's loving, right? It's like, oh, that was good. Yay. But when it's hurtful, then we start to internalize and process. And what did they mean by that? And I always ask myself, I wonder why I gave that person that script. Like, why, what they said to me, why does it bother me? Somebody could say to me, oh, Jack Canfield, one of the things he talks about is, I could say to you, you've got green hair. Well, you don't have green hair, so it's not going to bother you, right?
Right.
But if I say to you, geez, you're stupid, and if I think that people might think I'm stupid, then I take that on. And so when somebody says something to me and it hurts, I have to look at what in me needs to be healed, so that when somebody says that in the future, it's like, I don't know where you get that piece of information, but that's not true. I happen to be brilliant.
That's good advice. Women, they're the hardest. I mean, I know there's some men out there that have, because half my listeners are men, but it seems like women are very judgmental and hard on themselves more so. At least I, that's what I feel like, but it could be men too as well. But I feel like like middle-aged women are very hard on themselves for some reason. And I think your coaching program that you offer, especially the group thing, I think that's a brilliant idea, to come up with that and have that support to help one another, to not be, to be that judgmental portion, because that's what it is. It's our self-judgment.
Right. And here's the deal. If we're, when we judge others,
Mm-hmm.
then, what's happening is we're being judged, because it's a vibrational, it always comes back. And so we are constantly, and I don't know if men do it as much as women, or men do it differently than women, so it doesn't look like judgment.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we all carry around less than, and so it's learning how to love yourself enough to be the best person you can be in any given moment. It kind of gets back to the 4 agreements. Always do your best.
Yeah, always do your best. So, what's some advice you would give to our listeners that have been struggling with this conversation, this topic that we've gotten off onto tonight? What is some sound advice you'd give to them?
About judgment,
Yeah,
self-judgment.
about judgment, or changing our trajectory of our life path to attract those things that we really do want.
I think that the biggest issue people have is they really don't know what they want. And so I think when I start a one-on-one coaching, even in a group coaching, I will say to people, so like, what's going on? And they will give you a litany of things that that are happening in their life. And it's like, okay, so let's just put that aside. What is it you really want? Because sometimes the best way to find out what you want is looking at what's happening that you don't want in your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we are so used to being told, don't, don't talk positive about yourself. Don't have big, I mean, that's probably changed now, but I grew up in an era, it was, you're too big for your britches.
Right.
So, and it's like, you need to be your own cheerleader. And so to really, I think the biggest thing to do is to sit down, and somebody gave me this gift when I said, my picker's broken. Before I met Paul, I had a series my entire life of really, I was attracting non-supportive men into my life. That's a kind way to say what I was attracting into my life. And I was. And so I had a friend, I said, I have no idea. And she said, well, look at people in your life that have really good relationships, and what do you like about their relationships? List that. What is it about the relationships that you had that didn't work for you, and what would be the opposite of that? So if I want somebody that is authentic,
Mm-hmm.
then I would write that down. Like, if I want a relationship that is open and honest, if I want monogamy in my life, if I want I want somebody that loves the outdoors or not,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so that would be around relationship, but you can do it around your job. You could do it, with any aspect of your life. And if you don't know what you want, then start with what you don't want. And what's the opposite of that? I think that's the best place to start, is just kind of take those 7 areas and write down, like, what's working and what would you want that's not working? How would you shift that?
I think that's sound advice. And I posted your website in our description, but it's also going across the bottom of the screen. And they can contact you through your website. Is that correct?
Yes. And then they can also contact me through the Messed Up to Blessed Up Facebook page.
Awesome. So you got a Facebook page too. That's great. So, for my listeners out there, go to the Messed Up to Blessed Facebook page and give it a like. And if you're a time banker, I'll put a thing in and you can get a half a credit for that because I belong to the time bank here in St. Petersburg. And some of my listeners are time bankers, and I like to give them time credits for doing things.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Do you guys have a time bank where you are?
I have no idea. I'm going to write that down and check it out when we get off the phone.
Yeah, so a time bank is really interesting. It's like it's a you know how back in the old days our community was it took a village to raise an idiot kind
Right?
of thing. That's what we are. We're raising, and I'm the biggest idiot in the village. No, I'm just kidding. But we give each other time credits for helping each other out.
Nice. I like
So
that.
it's yeah, and it's worldwide actually. So but each community has their own time bank. So any of my listeners out there tonight, I will put a post in the software for you to give yourself a half a credit for going to Messed Up to Blessed Up Facebook page. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
And we've got about 4 minutes. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us this evening?
I would think the one thing I would like to share with people is to remember that, um, they are the divine idea of something way bigger than themselves. And so to live their life fully, to be kind, not only to themselves, to be kind to others, and to remember to, Ula has a saying, and I love it: be grateful, have faith, live Ula.
Oh, that is lovely. And so that is one of your coachings is the ULA, and the other one is the group type.
Right.
Yes. Awesome. Again, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and agreeing to because we had a mess up happen with you originally going to be on. So thank you for giving this another try and being on here. You made my heart grow 3 times as big tonight. So thank you so
Oh,
much for that.
well, thank
And
you for the opportunity.
yeah, and I hope that in the future that you'll agree to come and share what's going on in your life with us again and tell us where you are later on.
Absolutely. Thank you. I
All
would
right.
love that.
All right, folks. Well, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, this is the last show of this season. We're taking a break until September, and then we'll be back on in September. Just watch out for those links. Thank you so much for all your love and support, and we wish you lots of love and energy. And be safe this Mercury retrograde. Have a good evening, everyone.